What is up, everyone? It's Joe from Get Good Drums here with another mix walkthrough. That was my playthrough I made for this. It's my hardcore playthrough using Modern and Massive, and I'm now gonna walk you through the mix I made for it. So this is my session, all pretty straightforward stuff. I'll just quickly run you through what I've got selected in Modern and Massive. So there's no turbo, first of all. I've got turbo switched off on everything. Everything's set to the default levels that they come in when you open. I've selected the Tama Star Classic Babinga kick. I've got the Gretsch Bell Brass, the normal tuning, not the high-tuned one. The Guru Paduak 12x8 for rack. The same, but 16x14 for floor tom 1. And then the Q Drumco Steel 18x16 for floor tom 2. I think those toms work really nicely together. The 15-inch hats for this. A bit lower and trashier, which I thought suited the hardcore well. The 17-inch medium thin jazz. Splash. The default ride, as opposed to the Mega Bell. I chose the default one because I wanted the crash articulation. That's the MB20 medium heavy crash, and then the China is obviously the 20-inch Byzance Brilliant China. So yeah, I've got that routed out into Logic. As you can see, I've gone for kick, snare top, snare bottom, rack tom, floor tom 2, hi-hats, overheads, mono, near room, and far room. That's how I chose to route this out. And then bus-wise, I'm using three buses, for my drums. Bus 1, which goes to my parallel compression, bus 2, which goes to a reverb, and then bus 8, which is all the way over here, which is another reverb. In terms of instrumentation, we've got the drums and then bass guitar. You can see all my comps in here. Oh well, getting an insight into my guitars. I haven't named these yet. I'm bad with naming things. That's guitar, rhythm guitar left. Oops. Rhythm gut right. Then that's filtered rhythm, and we'll call this post left, post right. Wiggly, wobbly lead, and chungus for those. And I won't bother labeling these. Those are just a ramp and a sub drop. Okay, so you've heard it in the playthrough, but I'll just play you some of it again. So when I wrote this, I wanted to try and incorporate the different kinds of hardcore that I guess I like, to be honest, which is why I wanted to make this. So the beginning is very sort of knocked loose, Code Orangey. Then this sort of two-steppy bit is very Hatebreed. Oops. And then the chorus reminded me of like Comeback Kid. And then the end section, I don't know if you'd even call it hardcore, it's just a big breakdown. but I thought it sounded cool. So let's take a look at what I've got going on. As always, I'm doing the top-down mixing, which is Nolly's thing that he showed me and has done loads of videos on our YouTube. So I'm not going to show you the top-down mixing stuff or explain what it is. You can find that in other videos. But so let's look at my kick. So for this, I wanted like a nice slappy and aggressive click, maybe a little bit more clack than I normally use. So nice slappy and clacky. So this is first on my kick channel. It's just an EQ to pull down some of the mids. Nothing crazy, just looking to tame some of the sort of basketball-y areas and the sort of muddiness and boxiness. I'll just A/B that for you. I'll take everything off so you can hear like how I do it incrementally. So that's with the EQ. And that's without. So really big difference on that. And you can hear it's already kind of got the sound 60% of the way there. Then next, I've got smash and grab. No big surprises there. I've got it on grab mode on kick. Pulling around 3 dB pretty consistently. I'm not using the compressor to really deal with the dynamics as such, but more to use it to add some of that smack that I want. And then that goes into virtual mix bus. And this is just some sort of character building EQ, I guess. Getting the kind of aggressive character that I want from it. So on this FGN, which I believe is a Neve EQ, my knowledge about this kind of stuff and like what all these things emulate isn't great, but I'm pretty sure this is Neve. We're just boosting at around 3.9 kilohertz, so 4K really. Big amounts, 6.6 dB, which for this is quite aggressive because it's quite an aggressive sounding EQ. And then I'm boosting a little bit around probably 2K. Yeah, 2K. 2.3 dB. So I'll just A/B that for you. That's without. And that's with. So a big difference on that one. And then we've got that going into an Ssl EQ. And we're sort of, I like to use the Neve for like clacky attack and then the Ssl for more slappy attack. I find it works well in that way. And I'll just A/B this for you. Cool, so we've got at 4.5 kilohertz, 3 dB boost, and at around 12 kilohertz, a 4 dB boost. So that's it, really. Then we've just got it going into my parallel compression, which is just obviously smash and grab on the smash parallel circuit. We've not got much. We're only sending, how much are we sending? Around minus 24 dB. And then I've got that going into this Verb Suite reverb. I've got it on this setting, the FG480 unit on a plate reverb. This isn't doing a huge amount. I'll just solo that reverb for you to hear. So it's pretty quiet when I bring the kick in. But I found I just liked it, gave it a little bit of air around the top end. It's pretty negligible in the mix. Then snare top. What have we got going on here? Similar sort of chain of ideas, really. So that's with all the processing, and I'll take it off. So first thing is an EQ, Pro Q3 with it, without, with, without. So dealing with some of the boxiness and taking out some resonances. These are the settings if you want to copy them. So these will be resonances, and then this is dealing with sort of boxiness stuff. So if we A/B the boxiness, really big difference there, and I'll A/B these resonances. You'll notice that when I do the resonances, these aren't really narrow, like surgical cuts. They are more slightly broader. I find it just gives a nice natural tone, and I just prefer doing it that way. Unless there's like one really specific frequency. Otherwise, I try and do it a bit more general. That's going into smash and grab. Grab mode, snare. Pulling around -5-ish. Not doing anything with the B4 air, but I have got the saturation up to 65% just to help tame some of the transient. That's without. Sorry, that's with. Without. Just giving it some nice smacky smack. And that is going into virtual mix rack. So in here I've got the Ssl EQ and the drum gate. So we've got a couple, well, we've got all the bands in action actually. We've got a nice sort of not crazy high boost at 7.5K, just to give it some presence. And then a 4K, we've got a 5 dB boost. At 500 Hertz, we've got a cut just to counteract some boxiness. And then we've got a big old boost down at 207 Hertz. We've got a 10 dB boost there, which is quite a lot, but I find it gives it a really nice sort of upfront depth, which I enjoy. And then I've got this going into a gate, and you might think, why are you using the gate on sampled drums? And there's a couple of reasons. I find treating, like if you want sampled drums to sound realistic, you kind of have to treat them like you'd treat an acoustic kit. And obviously when you're using acoustic kits, you're going to gate your drums. So I find adding that gate, although you might think, but then you're cutting off the sustain. You are, but you're also processing it like they process acoustic drums, which I've just said. But it makes it sound more realistic, I think. And I don't want this specific snare is quite a long sustain, so I wanted to cut some of that off so it's just not eating into the rest of the mix, really. So I'll A/B the EQ and then A/B the gate for you. You can hear the ring on the snare just dies out a bit quicker. And I don't want to kill it completely. I want that ring there, but I just want to be able to control the length of it, basically. Then that goes into Decapitator, which is like a saturation distortion plugin. I love this thing. It just makes things sound aggressive. So it's doing a lot to the character of the drum there. I really love it. Sometimes it doesn't work in my mixes. Sometimes it does. For this, I think it sounded great. And that's going into Virtual Tape Machine, which is basically there to try and tame the transient and make it just sit a bit better in the mix. So that's with, without. You can push this harder and make it clip, and that'll have a more drastic effect. But I wanted to retain some of that aggressive snap. Then I've got minus 13 dB going to my parallel compression. So that's with, without. Just going to help bring it up in the mix, make it more in your face. And then we've got this going into my main drum reverb, which is the FG16X unit on this Ssl Verb Suite. Again, it's a plate. I like plates for drums. And we've got 835 mils. I've pulled the decay way down for that. But I just wanted it to sound sort of part of the drum and be explosive. I've got the width boosted up a bit to give the snare drum some width. And I've just tamed some of the highs because I found they were getting in the way. So that's with, without. So again, that's doing a lot for the sound. And then crucially, after that, I've got this EQ curve, which is killing the lows because we don't need that on a reverb, and killing some of the extreme highs just so it doesn't get in the way of other things. And I've also taken out some of this sort of boxy low mid-range because I found it was sort of muddying up the mix. I'll A/B the whole thing for you. It might sound like kind of tinny soloed, but in the mix, it makes it sit really well, I find. Then on my snare bottom, nice and snappy. This is the EQ I'm going for. Pretty just broad, cutting the lows, taking out some of that low boxy mid-range, and taking out some of the raspiness I found at 4K. Again, I will A/B it for you. So just shaping the character of that, really. Of course, into smash and grab. Doing some pretty extreme compression on there. I'm wanting to kind of squash the transient and have some of the sustain back up on that, really. That goes into virtual mix rack. Now, I use this monster extreme dynamic processor, which I normally don't use, but I found it sounded really cool for this. So I think it's just a compressor. Yeah, it is. It's just a mad compressor, I think. And you can hear it's really kind of just squashing it. And again, I'm just wanting to kind of make it like a, I don't know. I was kind of thinking of just making it a wedge of snare to sit under the top skin to kind of give it a shape. And then into Ssl Eq again, we're just boosting some highs and cutting a bit of the mids to counteract some of the character brought in by this compressor. So that's a 3 dB boost at 7.5, a 2 dB boost at 3K, a 4 dB cut at 350 Hertz. So again, just shaping the character and counteracting some of that kind of boxiness coming in. And then again, going into a gate. You can hear that's really extreme. I wanted that because I wanted it just to give a nice sort of, a wedge, a tight wedge. It's a weird way to describe it, but it's what I'm imagining in my head under the top snare, just to make it sound a nice whole sort of explosion and punch. That's without, you can hear why I did that. Right, pretty drastic. There's also some snare wires coming through on the top. So I could get away with cutting the snare bottoms that short. And then that goes into a Decapitator also to give it some raspiness. You can see I'm doing this a lot. I've got that all the way over to 8 on the drive. And that's just going to bring it up, give it some harmonics and distortion and make it sound nice and present. Then that goes into my parallel at -30, so not going loads into there. And then that goes to the reverb also. which is just the same reverb I used for the snare top. Now, for rack toms, I do the same processing on all of them, but just alter them slightly where needed. All the toms, that is. So where's some rack tom for me to show you? So I'm going for quite a dense rack tom sound on this. I love Will Putney's mixes for the stuff he does for like hardcore and metalcore. So I was kind of using that as an inspiration and then kind of merged it with some of the things I really love about Nolly's mixes. So it was kind of like I was going in trying to sort of mix between the two. And I did some people might consider it kind of weird stuff on the toms. So this isn't weird by any means, but it's just a nice controlling the mid-range and boosting some of that low fundamental. I'll A-B that for you. So it's kind of like a paperiness in the mid-range, which I wanted to take out, and then I'm just boosting that. And then we're cutting like below 57 because I don't want that sub info in the mix. That's going to smash and grab on the toms. Pulling pretty hard on that. Wow, that's a lot. But I thought it sounded cool. Not doing anything else on the settings there, just using the compressor. Then this is what some people might consider strange. I'm going to this disperser plugin by Kilohertz. This is typically used for like EDM music to make things sound more electronic, but I'm using it a very small amount, as you can see, and around the 130, which is where the sort of main note of the drum is. And I find it gives it a really cool like woodiness, and it helps bring the body forward in almost like a tubby way, but not in a way that I find unpleasant. And I think it makes the toms sound really cool and unique, but without taking away from the character of the drum and making it sound unrealistic or not like a drum. I'll A-B this for you. So it's pretty subtle. If I exaggerate this, you can hear how sort of electronic that starts sounding. But again, I'm using it like, 3 notches up from nil. Just to give it some of that character. I really like it. Makes the tom sound really sort of deep and thubby. I'm boosting some lows on the SSL at around 100 hertz, just to give it some more thunk on the bell curve. And then I'm boosting some highs on this Neve EQ because I want some nice snappy highs. So we've got a 2.5 shelf and then a 3.7 boost at around 4.5 kilohertz. Just bringing out that stick definition, and I want it to sound a bit snappy. And then we're doing a gate again to control the sustain. You hear how that really comes out the bloom, so I wanted to just cut that out. Because I wanted it to be nice and snappy. If it was a slower mix, I would probably let more of that in, but it's reasonably fast, so I didn't want that to get in the way. And then we're going quite a lot to my parallel compression at minus 11 dB. And then that's going to the same reverb as the other stuff. It's just going to help bring some of that sort of presence forward. I did exaggerate the panning a bit. Not loads, but you can see what I did there. And then for the floor toms, we've got the exact same processing, but I just alter some of the EQ because the character of the drum is going to be different on the different sizes, but the same ideas, taking out some of that paperiness and boosting some lows. You can see I did the same disperser settings, same smash and grab stuff, and I'm pretty sure I just copy and pasted the EQ from the rack tom onto the floor toms. Same send settings. I'll just show you the EQ for that. Very similar, but taking out some more of the lows, just because this is a 16 or 18 inch. Yeah, it's an 18-inch diameter, so it's large. So it's going to be more lows. So I was just handling that, essentially. Cool, so now on to the hi-hat. You can see I pulled this down a bit because I added some overdrive. I wanted it to sound a bit more trashy for this hardcore mix. I wanted it to sound nice and aggressive. So this is the EQ, extremely simple. I'm just cutting out the lows at 250 and then bringing some 500 hertz down. I don't want that sort of mid-range to be eating in. The hi-hats are quite thick cymbals, so you can get some sort of meatiness there, but I don't really want that. I wanted it to sound a bit sort of brighter. And then I'm just using Logic's stock overdrive plugin here. Not a lot, 1.5 dBs, tone all the way up because I don't want to cut any of the highs. And that just makes it sound a bit more aggressive. Sorry, let me loop that. So that's without. And then with. I think there's a little bit of a volume boost there too, but I like how it sounds on that. Overheads, again, simple. There was just a ringing in the overheads I was pulling out. That's 12,043 hertz. I'll just show you what that sounds like so you can sort of hear what I'm listening for. You can really hear that once you notice it. Then we're doing these little cuts. Again, just sort of shaping the sound. I cut out everything below 360 because I don't want that muddying up my overheads. And that's going into Soothe, which is doing a lot of the sort of notching for me. I've got it on this overhead compressor preset, and I think I altered just some of the depth a bit. So that's with, without. Just dealing with some resonances. And then I also compress my overheads, which is something I don't always do, but when I want a nice aggressive mix, this is something I like to do. But it's easy to overdo. That's quite a lot for overheads. I normally do less than that, but I wanted a nice aggressive mix. It also adds some like saturation, I find, which I like. And then for rooms, when I use Modern and Massive, I normally don't bother using the mono mic. I find mono room mics I kind of struggle to know what to do with them sometimes, but for this, I liked it. I'm pretty sure I've only got the kick and the snare coming through. And some cymbals. But no toms. Inside Modern and Massive, I killed the toms. In it, I didn't want that sort of muddiness messing around in there, so I cut them out. But for this, I was really focusing on the kick and snare. Because they're in the center, you can use the mono mic to reinforce them nicely without sort of jeopardizing the stereo image, which is another reason I pulled out the toms. But you can see I'm just killing the lows with a filter and a notch. And then I've got it going into Decapitator. Pretty much maxed out. It's without, with. And I'll mute and unmute this. So it's kind of helping giving some impact to the overall sound, I think. And it's adding some nice sort of dirty saturation down the center of the stereo image. And I found for this context, it worked really well. And then on my near, We've got smash and grab. First thing, room on the smash mode. Pulling. Doing that amount of damage. Nothing crazy. Then that's going into soothe to help with some of the cymbals. I'm using this as kind of like an overall presence boost of the drums. So I didn't want to smash it or add too much distortion. But I want to give the drums some kind of room presence. And I find the near microphones are really good for that. I'm actually boosting some of the mid-range, but then counteracting some of that, and then high passing it at around 100 hertz. I'll just A/B the EQ for you. So quite subtle, but just giving some more presence and counteracting some of the boxiness. And then I am more aggressive on the far room mic. We're going straight into smash and grab. You can see I actually pulled it into the pro mode on smash and grab V2 and dialed in these settings. I think it's because I wanted something a little bit more aggressive. You can really hear the sustain it's bringing to the snare tone in that. Had a lot of fun with that. And then that's going into Decapitator, which isn't something I normally do on rooms, but for this, I thought it sounded really cool. Obviously a pretty big volume boost there, but I liked the saturation it was bringing to the rooms and the trashiness. I thought it added to the whole sort of vibe. And then there's also some boxiness it's bringing out, Decapitator that is. So I counteracted that with the EQ here, and I'll A/B that for you so you can hear what I'm trying to do. And in the mix, you'll be able to hear that as well, especially. So dealing with a lot of that boxiness, taking that out, I'll just go through. Well, you can see all the settings here actually, so I don't need to go through. But yeah, getting rid of the subs, don't want that really for that. It's just going to muddy up the whole mix. Boxiness, paperiness, boxiness, and then just sort of high-end harshness I wanted to tame. And that's that for the drums. Then all that goes into my drum bus, which is going into this, it's not called a decapitator, is it? It's a distressor, thank you. Distressor emulator by Slate. And I'm just looking to add some sort of pumpiness to the whole mix. You can see I've got it on 50%, 4.1. Quick release. I'm not doing loads of gain reduction, but if I max the mix out, you'll be able to hear what it's doing. Just really brings some energy to the whole thing, and then I just dialed it back to taste, which I found was at 50. Just brings some excitement to the whole drum mix. I thought that sounded really cool. Right, so next on the list we have bass. This was recorded using my Dingwall NG2 4-string. First thing we did was bring up Neural DSP Dark Glass emulator, which for this I thought sounded super duper sick. So that's, I'm running this with the cab off because I run it into my own, well not my own, but an IR that Nolly gave me a while ago. I don't know what it is, but it sounds cool. So I'm just looking for some like raspiness, some aggression, some grunt, and a bit of pick definition, and then running that into this IR. And you can do the same, but just using this cab section. It's just instant good bass sound. Then we're running into a compressor. This is to accentuate the pick attack. I run it into two compressors. One to accentuate the pick attack, then into another one to help sort of even out the dynamics. So this is the pick attack accentuator. You can see I've got a really quick release because I want it to come back and then be ready to get the next pick. And I'm not doing loads, like 1 dB maybe. It's just to help sort of add a little bit of slap to the pick attack. You can do it more, but then it starts to just reduce the signal too much. So that's without and with. Pretty subtle. The dingwalls have such great pick attack anyway, but I liked what it did. And then this is to even out the dynamics. So I've got this basically limiting. I've got a really fast attack, but I've got quite a fast release. So I wanted to sort of even out the transients. But again, not doing loads. You can see I try and track as dynamically consistently as possible. It's pretty good. I could do better, but I found that this was good. I really tried. This is something Nolly showed me and taught me, is to really try and make all the pick dynamics as even as possible when tracking. It makes a big difference. And that's going into an EQ. Not much going on. This is again a testament to how good the dingwalls sound. This is all the EQ I'm doing. It's a bit of I've got a bit of dynamic EQ here. Just to help sort of play with those mid-range, the 200 mid-rangey, which I like to cut on bass. I'm not taking out a lot of the sub information. Sometimes you want to take out more, sometimes you want to take out less. Sometimes I take out more and then put R bass on to help bring some of those harmonics back in. But for this, I wanted something a bit more straightforward, and more sort of, I mean, I'm not going to say old school because I'm using like these new cool plugins, but a bit more straightforward. I didn't want to get crazy with the processing on the bass. And then for guitars, really simple stuff here. I'm using Neural's Granifier plugin. This thing sounds so cool. I wanted like a really purry guitar tone with lots of saturation, and this just delivers it in spades. That's not the best place to show that. Let's go here. I mean, all I did with this is, you can see the gains at 12, the bass is at 12. I boosted a little bit of the mids, cut a tiny bit of the treble. I switched to the Ssl tube. I originally had it on the KT66, which I liked because it was nice and bright, but then once I started putting the mix together, I switched to this and I found it just helped it sit in the mix better. I'm running the cab off because I'm running that into Cali Oversized. I put the overdrive on. This overdrive sounds amazing. I kind of want to get one in real life, although I don't really need to, but it just sounds great. You can see I've got the gain on none. On mode 1, level I left, and I just altered the tone roll off to where I felt there was bright enough, but not too bright. It just sounds great. As I said, that's going into Cali. And I used a preset for this. I'm afraid I can't remember which one. Maybe Perfect, because I wanted that purry. Is it? Oh, it is. Sweet. I used the Perfect preset that Misha made. Thank you, Misha. It just sounded perfect. There you go. It sounded great and perfect for this tone. I didn't do anything other on that. And then this is the EQ I did. As you can see, it's ridiculously simple, and that's just a testament to how sick the Cali Oversized plugin is. It's effectively mix ready, especially with that master EQ engaged, which I actually don't have on this. But I mean, yeah, even with it not engaged, this is all I found I needed to do. And that's the same on both rhythm guitars. It just sounds amazing. And then for this filtered rhythm, it's the exact same chain, but with a different EQ, cutting out the highs and lows. I find when I'm doing like an octave part, which goes into the center of the stereo image, it makes it sit really nicely. Because you're really doing it for the harmony, I find, when I do these kind of things. So without it... Oh, I'm clicking the wrong one. Here we go. With it off, there's just so much raspiness and low-end stuff that you don't need. And with it filtered like that, it sounds aggressive by itself. But I'm really trying to just capture the notes here to allow the melody to come through. Then for these sort of post-rock, weird, dissonant things, on the guitar there, what I'm doing is just doing a stretch. So the notes are one semitone apart and then stretching one, I think the lower string up. So it meets the note above it and it creates this cool like modulation effect. I ran the guitars on the way in through the what's it called? The Flux Echo by Horizon Devices. This thing's sick. I ran it through because I wanted to do like a pre-delay sound, so I put the delay before the amp, and I could have done that with plugins, but I thought it would be cool to just use an analog thing. So I can show you the effects. It's a bit dusty, sorry. Those are the settings I used, and I think I thought about leaving all the processing off on these because I think it sounds really cool. It sounds like an old like UFO sound effect or something. But I didn't. In the end, I ran them through the Granifier, Kali, and then similar sort of filtering, but also taking out some low end, some sort of low mids. I thought it sounded really cool under the breakdown and super heavy and gross. And then all these guitars are going into my guitar bus, which has a virtual mix rack. And that is doing absolutely nothing. Good to know. And then into virtual tape. Just giving it some warmth, taming some of the high end. I'll do it with and without. This is with. Without. I don't know, to my ears it sounds just a bit more digital with it off. Like, it still sounds great, but I just like what it does. And then I'll go on to these... The Wibbly Wobbly lead. This is something you hear Knocked Loose and bands like that do quite a lot, and I think it's a really cool effect. And in context, I'll just play this intro section. So this is like, yeah, it's using the same Granifier and Kali, but then going into Decapitator. I thought about doing this lo-fi, but then I thought this sounded cooler. So adding some drive. It's actually helping saturate some of the high end because I'm using this tone knob and pulling it to the, you can see how I've got the dark all the way over here. That's without and then with. So it's adding some gnarliness and then just taming the high end with this dark tone knob. I thought it sounded really cool. To get the modulation, I'm using this microphaser, which is a Logic stock plugin, but you can use any kind of phaser. You can hear I'm also like bending the string a lot, but I liked the sort of modulation that was giving. And then just EQ, filtering, and handling some harshness. And then we got some different things going on my chungus. Same granifier, Cali oversized. God, I think that sounds cool. But I'm going into Ssl Alter Boy, which is a pitch plugin, I guess, by Sound Toys. You can use it for things like auto-tune. Not auto-tune, but like pitch correction. But it's got this really cool drive circuit. And crucially for this sound is this formant thing. Formant changes the character of a voice or note, so it can make it sound like... It's like when you do this with your voice, like you're keeping the same note, but you're changing the... I guess it's the overtones, really. And I brought those down, you see here, to minus 6.1. And I'll just show you what that does. It gives it like a really low, gritty, chonky feeling. So I'll do it without. And then with... It just sounds gross, and I love it. And then that's going into EQ just to handle some of the low end. And then into SPL Transient Designer, because I wanted to boost some of the attack and just make it a slightly more sharp sound, so I killed some of the sustain. I'll A-B that for you. Pretty subtle. I don't actually know if it's doing anything because the gain reduction isn't showing up. But yeah, so that was the sound design around those sounds. I love that drum fill. Very naughty. And those are going into the guitar bus as well. And then for these ramps and stuff, Omnisphere does me good. Layered with Omnisphere again, I'm guessing, yeah. I bloody love it. And then a boomer by Omnisphere also. Pretty low because I don't want it to dominate the mix and compressor, but big boomer fireball. In context. Sick. Sometimes I like to cut the trails off to make it like stop exactly when the breakdown hits. But I liked it kind of bleeding in. I think it kind of adds to the chaos. It's all about what brings more to the vibe of the whole piece and sort of, I don't know, I think of it almost like when I write, I'm very cinematic in my head, and it's all about like theatrics and what helps set the stage of the music. And it's like part of it's called song production for a reason, but think of it like theater production. It's like the sound is creating the stage that you're performing these riffs on, if you will. And, you know, I could have a nice, clean, neat stage, which might be something better for like modern djenty bands, but this is hardcore, you know, it's doing it in some dirty underground stage in a dive bar. I want things to overlap and melt together and it to be loud and in your face and dirty. So I decided to keep those trails on. And I think it's those little bits of like, sort of, it's like sound role playing, you know, it's all adding to the image and character of the whole mix and song. And that's just, I really love doing that stuff. But that's it, you guys. Let's see what we've got going. I think the only thing I added, oh yeah, my master bus. Let's look at that. I've got this compressor, FG2A. We're giving some pumping. It's this mix bus magic preset I found worked perfectly. It's just going to bring some character to the whole thing. And I automate this down a bit. You can see here I've automated the threshold, or they call it peak reduction, down during the chorus. I didn't to begin with, and then I shared it with the guys, and Nolly mentioned it, and I tried it, and I mean, yeah, it sounded a lot better. It just brings the chorus forward a bit, because the compressor obviously kind of pushes the mix back a bit, which is how you get that pumping. But for the chorus, you want it to like come forward, be all around you. And I thought it really helped with the clarity. And with the pumping, it sounded cool, but it was quite, he used the adjective dizzying, which I totally agree with. It's kind of like, you feel like you're going through turbulence or something, which can be a cool effect if you want it. But for the chorus, I wanted it to be a bit more sort of straightforward. And then that's just going into Submission Audio Flatline for some mastering goodness. I don't really know what I'm doing with it, so I use all the presets because mastering is scary to me. But that's it. It's taken a while to go through it. 54 minutes. But it's a straightforward mix. And I'm actually pretty proud of this one. I'm often critical of my mixes, and there's things I would like to improve about it, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. So yeah, go ahead and steal it and use it and enjoy it. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If there's any other genres you'd like me to mix and show you, let me know in the comments. I'm really enjoying doing these, so I'd like to do more. But I've taken up enough of your day. I hope it was worth it. Goodbye, and thank you very much.